Good afternoon. Our next text in the book of John is John 9. And in this text, Jesus heals a man that has been blind from birth. Now, this idea of being blind, we often use this idea not only just for the physical blindness, but also figuratively. There's a phrase that we often use, he can't see the forest for the trees. In other words, the trees are blocking his view of the forest, but the trees are the forest, so he just can't see whatever it is we're trying to get him to see or her. If someone doesn't understand the point of a lesson or the point of the topic or the point of whatever, we may say that he's blind. Often when I watch a movie, I become really focused. If my kids are trying to talk to me or my wife is trying to say something, I may not even realize it because I'm so focused on watching. My wife is the same way with reading a book. She gets so focused on reading a book that everything else just kind of drowns out and is gone. Our focus sometimes makes us blind to the things that are going on around us. In our text, the Pharisees are blind to the working of God. They're trying to get Jesus for working on the Sabbath because he healed this man who was born blind on the Sabbath. They're blind. They can't see the forest because of the trees. Sometimes when we're in the middle of a particular tragedy or a trial or something like that, it just consumes our whole entire focus. And when that happens, we become blind to the other things that may be going on around us. Let me read to you starting in chapter 9. Let me read the first couple of verses here. As he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Now, sin really is not normally the cause of most of our trials and tragedies or the things that we find ourselves in the midst of. Now, to be truthful, to be honest, it certainly can be. Many times our sin has caught us out and has caused us to be in a situation that is really untenable, and it's really hard to get out of. So to be sure, sometimes sin is the root cause, but that's not normally the instance. Like, I don't think anybody's sin is what caused this particular virus alert that we're in. This virus didn't happen because somebody sinned. It happened, and now we're dealing with the aftermath of it. The virus has caused many deaths, and you may be a relative or a personal friend of somebody that has passed away from this virus, and that's hard. It hurts. It's painful. Or maybe you're suffering some other tragedy that is just hard, it's hurtful, and it's painful. Now, I know what you might be asking, how does this miracle address that? And I want us to read the next couple of verses here, verses 3 through 5. Jesus answered, it was not that this man sinned, or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming and no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. Now my focus is really on verse 3, where he says it was not this man's sin or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. Now this man was born blind specifically for this moment. We don't really know how old he is, but several times, or at least twice, we read in the text that his parents say that he is of age. And in the first century Jewish culture, that meant that he was probably 30 years old or older. He would spend all day, every day begging, because that's how a blind man earned his living. He couldn't work, so he begged, and people had pity or sympathy or empathy, and they gave alms to him, and he was able to eat that way. For 30 plus years, this man was blind for the specific reason to bring God glory at this point in time of his healing. Is that not amazing to you? What if we look at our trials and our tragedies in the same way? Now, to be honest, I'm not saying that everything that we've been through or we are going through was given to us specifically to bring God glory. But what I am saying is that everything that we are going through, we can use to bring God glory. It doesn't matter what it is. What if we would ask ourselves this question? How can I bring God glory through this particular trial or tragedy that I find myself in? Sure, it's horrible. Sure, it hurts. Sure, you may want to shake your fist at God and, God, why are you putting me through this? Why did you let this happen to me? But what if we swap that? And we come out on this other end of shaking our fist at God and we ask ourselves, how can I bring glory to God through the tragedy that I find myself in? Let me read to you Romans 8 and verse 28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, to those who are called according to his purpose. Now, the context of the verse in Romans 8:28 is the powerful working of the Spirit. The Spirit helps us in our weaknesses. The Spirit helps us because we don't know how to pray. And the very next verse, all things work to good, for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. In our weakness, God's strength is manifest. I think that's 2 Corinthians 12 as well, when Paul says God gave him a thorn in his side. He says that God's strength is shown through our weakness. What if during times of our weakness, we ask ourselves, what can I do to show God glory in the midst of this trial, in the midst of this tragedy? You know, a broken bone often needs to be reset. And resetting a broken bone can be really, really painful. But in the end, that pain has to be endured so the bone heals correctly. I liken that to a lot of the situations we find ourselves in. Maybe it's a broken bone or a death of a loved one, and we're in the midst of all this pain and all this hurt. But when we ask ourselves, how can I glorify God? Then we begin the reset process. Yes, it hurts. But in the end, we're better because of it. All things work to the good for those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Let me read John 3 and verse 5 for you one more time. It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. Display God's might in your weakness, because God specifically tells us that his power is made perfect in weakness. May the Lord bless you.